Well, thank you for staying with us. My name is Peter Wakaba. Farm Kenya, of course, continues now for this remaining segment of your afternoon discussion. I want to bring Anne in now. And from the point of view that when we talk about biocultural conservation, when we talk about regenerative aspects of agriculture, when we talk about the traditional aspects of this, there really was a place for women, right? Because we've seen in the what we'd have called the modern day sort of agriculture that we are used to, the sort of commercial aspects that as Africans we have been used to. They often sideline women. Women have literally no ownership. We've seen instances, you talked about coffee, we've seen in the pastoral areas where the livestock belongs mostly to men, that sort of thing. But we then get told that this was not necessarily the case in the past. Talk to us about that.
Thank you. When we look, for example, at issues of seed, many of the traditional Kenyan cultures, seed was always, the women are the custodians of the seed.
Yes.
The women will be able to grow the crops, select the seed, keep the seed for the next season, and ensure the family has food crops.
Yes.
Apart from that, women had their space in terms of what kind of activities they would undertake. Of course, even then, there were also some issues of men owning the land or owning the big livestock, but women's space was always there. When we come to the industrial model, it exacerbates that kind of difference. Because now we are talking about title deeds. Before then, there were no title deeds, but a woman belonged to a place. Even when a woman was not married and had children, the father would ensure she gets, she's allocated some of the inheritance.
She has access.
She has access, but also she has an inheritance, even if she's not married. But now we are seeing a situation in the modern aspects, the industrial model, where a lot of the industrial agricultural practices are controlled by men. We're now having issues of title deeds. Men have control and, or rather have more rights. Even in terms of families, you find a family that has one son and 10 daughters, the son might get everything and the daughters might be left out. And so when you bring cultural aspects of that, biocultural aspects, you bring about those practices that are very instrumental in ensuring there's access. Even if a lady does not own the land, they have access to produce food for their children. They have a place where they can get buried in case they lose their lives. And so those are very important. When we talk about those community dialogues that Simon was talking about, they bring those discussions. The younger generation and the older generation have an opportunity to discuss. This is how we used to do it. And because now knowledge is very much universal, you're able to choose which ones are good to keep, which are not good to keep. And so those remain very fundamental because, you know, right now, once a baby gets to 3 years, it's school. It's school. Holidays are very short. This holiday is 3 weeks. There are no those aspects of where children will go and spend time in the village to understand what happens, what kind of cultural practices, even those that have been brought up in the cities. And so we need to change that kind of attitude as parents. We need to change the aspects of, I need to go to the market with my children and show them how you buy fruits and vegetables and food from the market. It's not about buying food from the supermarket because you have to build the local economy.
Yes.
Yeah. When I talked about, for example, the Kamburu stories, when the women started producing more vegetables, they approached us and said, now we want to start selling in the supermarket. And we had to tell them, you know, when you go to the supermarket will dictate the price.
Yes.
If it's potato, the shape.
The quality.
You're better off accessing other markets, or what we call earth markets, or those farmer markets.
Yes.
And that is one area that we have been working on with various of our members. For example, in Kagio, there is a farmer market. We have, there's also a process, for example, with the fair trade, to build a farmer market or place where farmers can bring their produce in Thika. You're getting organic markets in Karen. And one thing that we are saying, even in terms of certification, most of the organic products get expensive because of the expensive certification. But now there's another way we have worked on, which is called participatory guarantee. So if we're a group of 30 farmers, we guarantee each other. So I can come to you and ask you, is really Simon an organic farmer? Does he use and there are rules and regulations so that we do not make organic or agroecologically produced food very expensive and becomes elitist.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting, and I want to bring Simon in here. Anne talked about the educational aspects and the challenges that we then face as a country, as a nation, as a people, because of the way our modern life has been structured, such that we then would struggle to pass this knowledge on to our children. We will struggle to even get the conversations going between the older generation, which in most instances will live very far apart from the younger people. How then do we start to work so that we say that we have this happening organically and in sustainable fashion and in a broad-based way across the country?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what I can say is that the kind of education we inherited at independence was not very different from the education system that colonial people brought. And you know, initially it was education to make us Africans be productive, be employable, be able to calculate a few mathematics when you are sent and that kind of thing. And for a long time, we have never tapped into our indigenous knowledge because even as Africans, there is a particular way we were getting educated to be able to cope with life. And some of these things have not really been able to be explored. And I think at the moment, I also want to say that when we started missing the jobs now, because people, when you go through the school, for example, if you are a graduate, you can never go back home again in the rural area because you need to remain in the city to be able to get a job. You get displaced in the city, and even from the village. And even when people see you around, they wonder whether this person really got a degree or what. And that is why government today is also reviving our education system, because it does not work in the interest of who we are, working to be able to get a degree and go and be employed and that kind of thing. So you see, like, for example, competence-based curriculum, what we have is an education that taps into a talent.
Yes. As
you grow up, how do you interact with the environment, and what do you make out of that environment? Do you become someone who can apply apps, who can bring new ideas around how to play around with the bee and that kind of creativity? So for a long time, when I started SALT and we started working with elders, trying to bring back our traditions, to bring back our knowledge, it's like building a data bank. And like Anne is saying, sometimes when you want to select a good idea, you don't select an idea when you have only two. It is only when you have diversity. So when you bring these communities to dialogue, a lot of things really emerge out of their experience, out of their knowledge, even from their songs and dances, and all these come together. So my experience has been that when we begin this journey, we realize that our young people don't know that these people who have never been to school know something. Because, for example, when I was very young, we used to go to school, and when our teacher is not there, we were told, go home, the teacher is not there. It means like your teacher is the owner of the knowledge. But you see, you as young people, you can also help to generate knowledge if you are facilitated. So we found that there was a disconnect between what we were doing in SALT, where we bring elders to discuss how things can go forward. And then we started, I started a school called Kideno Learning Center, where I have been able to bring elders to school, to speak to young people, to tell them stories, and even to train them about traditional medicine, for example, by growing abo trees. And this is very, very, and even practicing some of the traditional skills like beading, like craft. Taraka, sometimes we find that we have very nice beading and craft. And I'm very sure when these children grow old, someone will find something around fashion design there, and something that will be very interesting. And at least also when we bring elders there, besides, this is now through a program we call Culture and Nature Club. Besides teaching the curriculum, we also bring this aspect. And you see, when they discover that even other people have this kind of knowledge, that is when they also begin to tap into what the community knows, so that our schools also don't become islands. There is a university here, there is a school here, but the community members don't even know what goes on around there. So how can also community come to contribute even ideas to schools that we have? And this is also something that also can help our people. So this is a particular way we have also been working, also tapping into the knowledge of the community and also trying to practice that as part of the CBC now, and also as part of how we are trying also to bring our young people to connect with their culture and also their natural environment.
So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, because we have just about 5 minutes, there have been lots of attempts at African Renaissance. So that you find for the Kikuyus, we have the so-called Kiama Kiama. For Merus, we have the Njurincheke and others, and so many other formations. Then on the other hand, you have people like in the church who then contest various aspects, like for example, when it comes to the circumcision and graduation of young men and those sorts of things. So I think I want us to close from a point of knitting all this together in cohesion, so that we say then that everyone is from the perspective where you want to find a thing which will work for Africans, for the environment, for their agriculture, for their knowledge. So how do we move this forward? In closing, I think we start with you. I think we start with you, Simon, and then we finish with Anne.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's always good to have all this, to have Kiama Kiama, to have Njurincheke, to have initiatives also that come from the church.
Yes.
I think for me, I have no problem. What I said is that as long as those ideas do not undermine what community really believes in.
Yes.
As long as it does not come to tell us when you take boys through rite of passage, this is wrong, or when you tell them to respect their parents, or when you tell them to behave, it is not wrong for me, as long as it does. But of course, when we deal with these issues of like rite of passage, how we understand it traditional is actually something that has been handed over from generation to generation. It's very cultural.
Yes.
Actually, when you go through a rite of passage traditionally,
yes,
it brings you to connect with the land, to connect with your ancestors, and to connect with the well-being of the whole territory. And one of the things that I've really found with this rite of passage, especially in Africa, they are very important in terms of maturation of our young people, but not like the Western. Western, they have really trivialized these things. They are not even there. But for us now, you find that the rite of passage knows to take that boy to the hospital or wherever you take him to the world for the cat. Is also about the instructions. Who are we? Who are you? For example, I tell them that when you used to go through rite of passage, you are being prepared to be a warrior. And you see, the aspect and the whole spirit of being a warrior is something like somebody who is responsible, who can be able to go out and bring back something for your community when you have a family. It's not about going to fight now. It's also that when you go to the education system, you are able to concentrate, you are able to work hard, and you are able to prove yourself that really you are somebody who can be resilient. So these are things that we need to bring again also to the community dialogues. And I think also it's also good to give, if it's an issue of elders,
yes,
let's give it the elders, but also the church as a role.
Yes.
The challenge also I find within the community today is like we have Christianized or made everything, even when we are eating our own food, even when we are farming.
Yes.
There were those songs we were singing when we were farming,
yes,
that also talk to the millet we are farming. We call millet, we speak to it. Those things are very important. Not every time we bring everything, we sing these other songs. When we go to church, we sing them, we invoke Christ. But also when we come to the crops, let's also invoke the spirit of the crops. So these things should also be balanced in ways that they make meaning, not something that we just bring this to the church or church this to the other way. It doesn't work like that for me.
Interesting. Anne?
Yes, I think as Simon says, there are spaces and there's a role that's played by the church and also the Njurincheke, the Kiama Kiama, because you find also community and culture is also very dynamic.
Yes.
So you're finding, like, for example, in Nairobi, when you go to the central part of the country, there are many women many single parent-headed households. And these ones struggle because some of the cultural aspects are not there.
Yes.
Like you find some cannot get a relative to stand in for their son. And so when you go, the church has taken up that mantle to support these communities, and also even families that have both heads, the head and the wife, the husband and the wife. But as we say, culture is very dynamic. There are various aspects that need to be strengthened in there, because you know, when a child goes or a boy goes through that kind of ceremony, they need to be very responsible. And you'll see it even in the traditional aspect. Once a boy is circumcised, they stop. The moment where they're circumcised and they move to that level, if it was a last born and would follow their mother everywhere, he knows now, I'm a man. I can take responsibility.
Yes.
But we've also seen that recognition even at the national level. For example, in Kenya, we are now almost completing the development of a national agroecology strategy. The agroecology strategy has been ingrown. We have done it as Kenyans and have brought in all aspects of the culture, the organic, everything, issues of transition, issues of coexistence, transition from high input agriculture to low input agriculture. And this is very fundamental because we're doing it under the Intersectoral Forum on Biodiversity and Agroecology, which is a platform, multi-stakeholder platform that brings in civil society, private sector, government, and all this. And this is very important, for example, in taking us forward in terms of policy. So the role of everyone has a responsibility to ensure that we bring back all positive biocultural aspects that will help us move to the next level, because tomorrow or today, we have now to consider ourselves as food producers. It's farm to fork. Not kiwis from New Zealand traveling miles, but we can produce kiwis in Kenya.
Okay, indeed. Thank you very much, both Simon and Anne, for taking the time to talk to us. A really different, a really insightful, really incisive conversation, and I think one that we also need to take to continue one of these days, bring you back into studio and get deep into the various aspects that we've talked about, because I think we've barely broken the surface. But thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Well, on that note, I think that is where we want to bring it to a close for today's edition of the Farm Kenya show. Of course, the news continues here on KTN, and of course, tomorrow at the same time, tomorrow being Tuesday, our Tuesday edition of Farm Kenya will take center stage. But for now, from us here in studio, my name is Peter Wakaba. It is Kwaheri ya kuonana.